Hey, folks, welcome back to your every other week um, movie punditry. Sorry for the pause there. I had to get back in the flow of things. Mr. Mike, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad at all.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Red 5 standing by.
I am Iron Man.
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. I am Groot.
Hello there.
Yes, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
If you step out that door, you are an Avenger.
That's what we call ourselves. Sort of like a team. Earth's mightiest heroes type thing.
Superhero landing. She gonna do a superhero landing. Wait for it.
I could do this all day.
Okay, how you been?
I've been good. I've been pretty good, actually.
All right, so let's start things off with some Star Wars news. Project Luminous was unveiled. How do you feel about this?
I guess I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. It seems ambitious. You know, this whole thing, which is going to be, a bunch of different books and a bunch of different comics and all different kind of things. The one thing that I will say is that I am, I'm interested in the people who are involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Claudia Gray, who's fantastic. Daniel Jose Older. I mean, there's just some authors in here who are just pretty good. So
I was just reading up on this stuff. And I saw Daniel Jose Older's name. What else has he done? Because I've seen his name before.
he did one of the short stories in A Certain Point of View. He did a book which was I guess it was kind of one of the wraparound novels of the Solo movie.
Okay.
Called Last Shot, which was actually pretty good. He's he hasn't done a lot, but he's done a couple of interesting things.
Okay.
And Claudia Gray she's done some fantastic stuff. So I'm really, really excited about that. She did Lost Stars, which I think is one of the best of the Star Wars, novels. She did Bloodline, which is, she did this, the Bloodline and Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which all of them are tremendous. It's really, really good. She did one of the better short stories in A Certain Point of View. You know what that is? Did you read that?
No, I got, was it Aftermath? Was that the first thing that came out with the first movie that came out a couple years ago?
Aftermath, right? Yeah, the Chuck Wendig stuff.
I got Aftermath, and then I didn't pick up anything else.
Yeah, so Lost Stars is it's kind of young adult, but Claudia Gray coming into this was a young adult author.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it tells a story of these two people. They start off as teenagers and they grow up on this planet together, and they both join the Imperial Academy. But then one of them gets kind of disillusioned, and they're in love. They love each other, and they always have loved each other since they were kids. But one of them leaves and joins the rebellion, and so you get this kind of point of this thing where both of them, you're getting the story from both sides, from the rebellion side and from the Empire side, and so like one of the things they kind of bring up is like after the destruction of the Death Star, the first Death Star in Yavin, is the girl who's an Imperial, who's in the Imperial officer, is like, all she's looking at it is like how many of her friends just got killed.
Yeah.
And she looks at the rebellion as like they're terrorists. She's not like the head of the Empire. She doesn't, she's just a soldier.
Yeah.
And to her, they're terrorists. And so it's this interesting kind of new way of looking at like kind of both sides of the story. But I was specifically speaking about from a certain point of view. Did you read any of that?
No, I have like Star Wars material I have not touched.
So a certain point of view is it came out in 2017, and it's an anthology of 40 short stories told about character, like about background characters in the Star Wars universe. So for instance, one of the stories is about the officer in A New Hope who told the gunner not to shoot the escape pod.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole story about him and why he did that. And you know, because they were the officers were being rated on their accuracy,
Yeah,
and their kills, and so to shoot an empty escape pod would have brought his average down. So that's why he that's why he held fire, and then he finds out later that the droids were actually in the thing, and so he was worried that Vader was going to come and get him, and it was like this whole humorous kind of story. So just like stuff like that. Like there was a story about the bartender in the cantina. There's a story about the band in the cantina.
Oh, we've talked about this.
And it's just and they're all short. Like they all read in like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You know, there's just stories about like particular stormtroopers, or you know, just a pilot. You know, this particular pilot or something like that. So it's a quick read, and it's just a lot of fun. And Claudia Gray wrote one of the stories in it, and it was really good. And you know, Daniel Jose Older wrote one of the stories in it. So, you know, I'm familiar with their work from having read at least a few of their novels and their short stories. So I'm really looking forward to this project.
Okay, so besides being books, I know there's going to be some comic books. There's nothing on screen for this, right?
Correct. This is all written.
This reminds me of a slightly not as ambitious Shadows of the Empire. Because remember how we got a book, we got a video game for that. There's some comic books and a whole bunch of toys. They didn't say anything about toys, did they?
No, as far as I know, this is simply books and comic books.
Okay. And this is going to take place in the High Republic, so 200 years before the Phantom Menace.
Correct.
So to give the folks some backstory, what is the galaxy like during this time?
Well, it's kind of it's, you know, the golden age of the Jedi, so to speak. You know, the Jedi are extremely active throughout the galaxy, and you know, it's obviously long before the Galactic Civil War, long before the rise of the Empire. The galaxy is kind of a more rough and ready place. You know, there's not as it's not as civilized as you see during the prequel era. You know, so there's a lot of opportunity for interesting stories. Kind of, you know, I don't know what they're going to do, but kind of a Wild Wild West in space kind of thing, maybe.
Nice. And then I was reading also, and it said that there's something that the Jedi are afraid of. Do you know what that is, or that's something?
Yeah, I don't actually. I don't know what they're referring to there.
Okay. And since we're on the topic of Star Wars, what's going on with the final season of Clone Wars?
Well, we're 2 episodes in, and so the first episode was called The Bad Batch, and it introduced a group of clone troopers who were kind of they were called defects. Like they had you know, they weren't like the cookie cutter troopers like most of the troopers were, but each one of them had kind of a desirable trait. Like one was like really big and super strong, one is like really, really smart. You one is really aggressive, one is like a super sharpshooter. So these guys are they go on a mission with Rex and Cody to figure out why the Separatists are suddenly being so successful. And so these first 2 episodes kind of take us through that arc.
And then have they given hints of what the end game is for this final season?
No, not yet. It's really too early to tell.
Do I need to watch all the other seasons to enjoy this, or could I just jump right in and pick it up?
I think you can pretty much, at least at this point, I think you could jump in.
Because that's what's been holding me back.
I don't know once they get into the whole, because we know that Ahsoka Tano's coming back, and I don't know what that's going to look like and how much of her backstory you need. And I've also heard that they're going to deal with like either the Siege of Mandalore or something that happened on Mandalore.
That'd be nice.
So I don't know if you need to be familiar with, the Mandalore arc. I mean, my understanding is that Katie Sackhoff came in and did dialogue. So we could expect that Bo-Katan's going to be in it. So I don't know how much of that story you need to know in order to really understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to see it and see what it is. But certainly that stuff is worth watching. So
okay, because Disney Plus was kind of dry for me lately, so I actually went back and watched the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes cartoon. And I was so upset that they canceled that. And then I watched the other one that followed up with it. Followed it, and it wasn't as bad as I remember. I think it was initially turned off by it because they canceled Earth's Mightiest Heroes and made a new one to mirror what we were seeing in the movie theaters, with like Stark like front and center, and everybody else is pretty much a supporting cast. But and then a couple episodes back we talked about this. Like they really, and it looks like next year they will, but they got to make sure that there's more things to keep us invested in that app, because it is dry right now up there. It's pretty much like a nostalgia thing right now.
It is. I mean, it's kind of like your one-stop shop for Marvel movies. I mean, Black Panther's showing up this month. It's got, one of the interesting things I think is that there are, and there hasn't been a lot of conversation about this, but there are very subtle edits to some of the movies.
Really?
Like for instance, it seems like they pulled, like they're not releasing the theatrical cut of the original trilogy, but they've pulled back some of the special edition stuff. And one of the big things, like the first thing that really got kind of noticed is, obviously the way that A New Hope was released theatrically, Han shot Greedo kind of preemptively.
I heard about that,
which I like, obviously, because to me that helps to inform his arc. He goes from being a guy who would just shoot Greedo in cold blood to a guy who, helps to save the rebellion. And then the special editions had Greedo shoot Han first and miss, and then Han shoots Greedo to make it look like a kind of self-defense thing, which, had this whole uproar and Han shot first and blah, 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 blah. So if you watch it now on the app, they shoot simultaneously.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man.
But I think there's been other things that have been kind of walked. Some of the other special edition stuff that's been walked back a little bit. So it's interesting to see that they did those edits. But, there's not a lot going on. I mean, obviously the Clone Wars thing is going on now. They're still in the process of filming The Mandalorian, the second season of that. So we will be getting that. And obviously the new show, once they get these new shows out of the pipeline and onto the app, kind of the third and fourth quarter of this year and into next year, things are going to start really clicking.
Oh, yeah. Things are going to really
they dropped this thing and they're still doing production on a lot of the stuff. But once we start seeing, the Falcon and the Snowman and WandaVision and Loki and the Eternals and all this other stuff that's coming, then it's going to really start to take off.
And speaking of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, I went into the comic book store last week, and right on cue, as soon as Marvel's about to, put a character on film, they either get their own book or they make they get a nice little arc in somebody else's book. And
Oh, of
right on the
course.
shelf was Falcon and Winter Soldier issue 1. And
Absolutely.
it's
You know they're going to do that.
really, really good. I was surprised. I thought it was just going to be some throwaway thing to just, keep these guys in the forefront of our minds, but it's okay. So the story continues from the whole Hydra Cap thing fiasco from a couple years back, but you can definitely see that it has that Civil War vibe. Like, so basically, Bucky helped get rid of Hydra, and he's pardoned for all the crimes he's committed, on the condition that if the U.S. government needs him, he has to basically go be an assassin, do what he was doing for Hydra when he was programmed. So he's just sitting in his house, and it's a scene right out of Civil War. The guys come in, they try to kill him. He takes them out, and he ends up making his way to New York, and him and Sam are hunting down. So it's basically the remnants of Hydra. There's a power struggle, and he and Sam are trying to figure out who's going to end up taking over Hydra and getting rid of them before it actually happens. But the artwork is really nice. The dialogue's good. I'm happy because there aren't too many Winter Soldier books out right now. Usually it's him teaming up with somebody. And he's still teaming up with Sam, but this is giving him like enough of his own story and fleshing him out. So that's pretty cool. And then what else were they? Oh, so the other thing that they for this year is Iron Man 2020, and they're doing Force Works 2020 with U.S. Agent. Surprise, surprise! He's going to be in Falcon Winter Soldier, and Rhodey and Quake teaming up, and they're also taking on. There's like an AI threat that they have to stop. So it's crazy. Like they're really clicking on all cylinders in their comic books. While this guy's over on beloved DC just got rid of.
Nobody does cross promotion like the mouse.
Yeah, at all. While DC's drowning, and it's sad, man. It's really sad. But yeah, let's move on over to Speaking of Time Warner, HBO and Westworld.
Westworld's coming, baby.
I'm excited. March, right? This month?
Yes. And so yeah, March 15th it comes. So we're 2 weeks away. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to figuring out what this is, figuring out when this is, figuring out where this is. We don't really know anything about it. It's the trailers have been cryptic. There's additional stuff that's been released on the website and at conventions and things like that, just like they've done before. One of the things I will say is that the producers and the creators of this, who are Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, have publicly said that this season will be more straightforward and less confusing than season 2.
Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord.
They have heard the fans, and they are responding. Because last season was a mind screw.
It was all over the place.
It was all over the place. And so this is supposed to be kind of more in the vein narratively of what season 1 looked like. Less mystery boxes, less,
MacGuffins,
less twists, less MacGuffins, less threads to follow, less time jumps, kind of more of a straightforward story. And that's good news.
So, me and you we don't get into this like, oh, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But, and this has bothered me. You think we're getting Ford back?
I would doubt it. Unless they do it unless it's maybe in some kind of flashback. But I mean, he's very dead.
I still don't think he's dead.
Really?
I still don't think he's dead.
I think the story's moved on past Ford.
My thing's always been, it was like, if your plan was to just let the robots run free and do as they please, you didn't have to sacrifice yourself to do that. I'd always felt like there was this, like, I'm going to use that word again, end game, some master plan, overarching plan. I think it's only right that he's still around. And the other thing too is, I was under the assumption that the man in the black hat was dead.
Yeah, well, Ed Harris is certainly in the trailer, but that does not mean that it's not a flashback, because there's also speculation that there's a fairly significant time jump.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see what happens, and I think there's still going to be a lot of focus on the idea of being in a loop, and the idea, the Westworld's always been about this idea of choice and free will, and I think we're going to continue to see that thread kind of unravel. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dolores character has, because we see her interact with Aaron Paul's character, and it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. Is this going to be some kind of situation where she's freeing humans that are stuck in a loop? Is this a planned society? Is this a society where people are kind of put into a lane and they're stuck in that lane? Which would certainly kind of, Westworld at its best has always kind of echoed what is going on in the world.
Yeah.
Most good science fiction does that. And there's a lot of kind of buzz lately about this idea of like kind of being stuck in your lane, like wherever you are, that's kind of where you are. So it'd be interesting to see if they kind of develop the story that way.
So, looking back at Watchmen and a superb season they had, if they knock this thing out the park, you think they should shut it down?
I think it's pretty much been all but announced that this is it. One, it's a horrendously expensive show.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the viewership of something like Game of Thrones or Watchmen. But also, I think Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy have pretty much come out and said, like, this is where the story is going to wrap. And, we're ready to move on. And we've told the story. And I think that you're going to see this is going to be the end of it.
Okay. I'm all for short storytelling. Lost
me too.
Convinced me that some shows should probably get 2-3 seasons, 4 tops if it's told right.
Yeah, I think, which is one of the things that I love about Battlestar Galactica is that it's 4 seasons.
Yeah,
and that feels right. Lost, which went 6 seasons, 7 seasons, something like that. It felt long, and it felt like they were trying to fill it in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just that the length of that show ruined it for me. Like, just like I'm starting to feel like the Flash on the CW might want to wrap this thing up in a year or two. You're gonna just exhaust some of these stories, and I get it. The ratings have been decent, especially with how bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, because you have this tug of war between the creators who are like, okay, we've told the story, there's no more story to tell here, and the network who's like, yeah, but we're selling advertising,
yeah,
people are watching it, we need more of this.
And that's a tough one. It's a really tough one. And I'm trying to think about the actors too. They're like, hey, some of them are like, hey, I'd still like to take a check, but then some people want to move on. Like, I saw that America Ferrera left Superstore.
Right.
seemed like it came out of the blue for most people. Like, I wonder if have you heard of any instances where an actor or actress is like, I'm done, and the studio's just like, we're going to give you a boatload of money, just ride this thing on out, give us another year or two.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm sure it's happened, but I mean, who knows about what these negotiations are? And you'll see a lot of times, a lot of the problem is that a lot of times the actors will sign a contract for a certain amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know what the show's going to be.
Yeah.
And then the show becomes huge, and now these actors have, they've got leverage.
Yeah.
Right. So you look at something like, I mean, we'll go back, 25 years, but you look at like Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was huge in its time. And, so you had the principals, these 6 principal or 7 principal actors who, they all signed on for 6 seasons. And, the network wanted a 7th season. And they're all like, well, then you're going to pay me. You have a huge show, and are you going to get rid of Jean-Luc Picard right now? It's kind of, so it, in that way, it's kind of like baseball contracts.
Yeah.
Let's use that analogy. Is like, baseball contracts they tend to be backloaded. Like, you get paid for the stuff that you did early in your career.
That Albert Pujols contract is horrible.
At the end of your career. What?
That Albert Pujols contract is horrendous.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, you get a guy, even a guy like Jeter, right? He signs on to the Yankees for nothing, and plays for 8 years or 6 years or whatever it was, or Jorge Posada or one of those guys, and when they get to be, 35 years old and they're on the backside of their career, but that's when they get paid. That's when they're making the big money. Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like a football contract where they're signing these kids up front and they're getting the big money up front.
Yeah.
Acting is very much like a baseball contract. You're getting paid for what you did in the past. And every time you win an award, every time you have a hit movie, every time something really happens, your quote goes up and you get paid for, what you used to do. And the same thing with these TV series. They sign these actors on, and unless they're a real marquee name, nobody knows what these shows are going to be. Obviously with Westworld, they sign on a guy like Anthony Hopkins, which is borderline stunt casting. That's your big draw.
Yeah.
And they sign on Jeffrey Wright, who people know. But I mean, nobody knows Luke Hemsworth. Nobody knows Evan Rachel Wood, really.
He's the Hemsworth no one cares about.
Thandie Newton is kind of, what has she done?
Thanks, bit parts.
Bit parts and little stuff, but she hasn't really had a major success in 10, 15 years. And all these other characters, who nobody really knows them. But hey, now the show is kind of taken along. And so now you got to pay these people.
Yeah.
So I mean, as these shows go along, they get more and more expensive to make because, for all kinds of reasons, but not the least of which is this above the line talent, the actors and the producers and the writers, they want to get paid for the success of the first couple of seasons. So, and at some point the balance has got to tip and people got to look at it and say, all right, well, we're going to pull the plug on it. This is going to be it. And the creative people, they have a story they want to tell, and then they don't want to drag it out to, you want to go out on top. You want to go out when people, always leave them wanting more.
True. That is true. I'm trying to think, who's had a good series finale? Like, what series finale sticks out to you the most?
Well, we'll go back to Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I think was maybe one of the greatest series finales ever.
Mm-hmm.
I personally really liked the Battlestar Galactica finale. I know a lot of people didn't. Halt and Catch Fire had a really good ending. Newhart had a fantastic ending. It was really funny. Just trying to think of what else. I mean, we want to go way back. You can go back to like MASH.
I knew that was gonna come up. I've never seen, but I've heard like it was great.
Oh, it was amazing. Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That had an incredible season finale.
You know what? The Sopranos one. How'd you like that?
The thing about the Sopranos finale is everybody talks about that last scene in the diner, and that's fine. But I think the episode was just okay. But I think that last moment was good, only because people talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that I don't know. I want it, and I get it. You're not always going to get closure, but I wanted something concrete out of Sopranos. You know what?
You think you do.
No, I did,
but sometimes you don't.
Yeah. And what would
I'll give you an example, right? And I don't think you didn't really watch Battlestar Galactica, right?
No.
Yeah, man, what a mess. You should have. But so one of these primary characters in it, Katie Sackhoff's character Starbuck, there's this whole thing where in middle of the 4th season she was killed, and then 2 episodes later she comes back, and then there's this whole idea for the last half of the season, or last third of the season, of like what exactly is going on with her. And the show had all these kind of aspects of, are people Cylons, or is there like a supernatural aspect to it? And so people were really kind of hoping that they had some kind of real closure for Starbuck. Like there was going to be like this definitive answer. This is what she is. And they did not give us that. She literally just like turned around to one of the other characters and was like, well, I'm just done. My journey's over. And they cut away from her and he's talking, and they cut back and she's gone, and that's it. Literally, she just disappeared, and with no resolution whatsoever. And people were like upset about it.
But that would have bothered me.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? If they had said, this is what Carathrace is, this is what Starbuck is, she's a Cylon, and it would have been like, oh, okay, whatever. People would have liked it, people would have hated it. Oh, she's an angel, or she's whatever. Okay, that's fine. But by leaving it ambiguous, it's kind of like she could be whatever you need her to be. You know what I'm saying? Like you could still imagine what she is. You could still imagine what the possibility is.
Okay, but now I saw you tweet something different when Blade Runner, the latest Blade Runner came out, and there were questions about Harrison Ford. Was he human or was he a robot? And then
I'm not saying, there's definitely ambiguousness in that, and it's open to interpretation. But I have my interpretation of it.
What did you want, though?
I don't think I had a want. I don't think, because it's one movie, and I don't think I had this idea of, he needs to be, it's not like a series and you're leading up to something. You go and you sit down and you watch the movie, and then you draw a conclusion off the movie. So for me, the more satisfying explanation is that Deckard is a replicant. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand that there's this interpretation that he's not. And that's what I think one of the things that makes that film so brilliant is you and I can sit down on opposite sides of that conversation and have equally valid points.
Now,
instead of somebody coming out and saying, I think it's lazy storytelling to come out and say, no, this is what he is. He's human.
Now, I never saw the first one. Was there like a lot of question of his humanity in that movie?
Absolutely. it wasn't, but it was under the surface. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
it wasn't like anybody in the film was questioning him or saying, like in the second film. But as you're watching the movie, there's this question in your mind about, and even after you watch the movie and when you rewatch the movie, there's this question in your mind about who he is and what his nature is. And that's what makes it interesting. And in fact, you sit there and, like it's the ambiguousness. Even the people who create it don't agree on it.
Wow.
Harrison Ford thinks one thing, Ridley Scott thinks another thing, and they've publicly come out and said it. You know what I'm saying? It's like in Endgame. When you sit there and say, okay, when you sit there and look at Cap's and the story of Cap and what he does, does he create a new timeline? Does he go back in our timeline?
I agree with the writers.
If you ask the writers, they say one thing, and if you ask the directors, they say something else.
I'm going with the writers. They wrote the thing.
So, but to me, it's that kind of storytelling that makes things interesting. If you look at films like basically everything Christopher Nolan's ever done, or, it's like there's always a question at the end of it. You can have a conversation afterwards about it. And that's what makes that art interesting to me. Not that you wrap it up in a bow and tell me this is what it is.
I like standing on concrete. I like definitive answers.
Even at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, does Rey stay on Tatooine? Or is she just leaving the lightsabers there as a legacy?
As bad as that movie was, I don't care where she go. Just don't come back.
Well, that's a whole different.
Oh man, she can. That whole cast can stay there, except for Boba Frick. He can come to the next film.
Boba Frick can be anywhere he wants to be.
Oh man, I'm still upset that they let that thing get out. Before we get out of here, anything you've been watching that you want to share with folks? Like, what's the thing out there that you're like, I wish everybody could see this?
Well, I just, I think I said last week that last time we recorded, I had just finished the second season of Narcos Mexico. Y'all need to be watching that show because it's amazing. I just started watching the second season of Altered Carbon.
I heard it's pretty good.
Which is really good. Anthony Mackie's in it now. They moved on from Joel Kinnaman. And Anthony Mackie is playing the same character.
Okay.
I don't know how familiar you are with the basic story.
I saw the first episode. Isn't it sort of like you can die but be brought back into someone else's body, or you can switch bodies?
Correct. Yeah. So the premise is that it takes place way out in the future, and it's in a world where your brain can basically be downloaded into what they call a stack, which is like a little disc that goes in the back of your neck, and then they grow. They either grow or build human bodies. And your stack, they call them sleeves, and your stack can be put into a sleeve. So you can, if you have enough wealth, you can be virtually immortal.
Yeah.
And so, the main protagonist of the story is this character, Takashi Kovacs, who was, when he was his original form, he was an elite, special forces kind of shock trooper. Mm-hmm. They were called envoys, and he took part in like an uprising. And so he was, his stack was pulled out, and he was basically put in prison for 300 years.
Jeez.
But then he was pulled out, and he was sleeved into, he was an Asian guy, but he was sleeved into this white guy's body. in order to solve a murder. This really wealthy guy, pulled him out to solve his own murder, and that was season 1. And now season 2, he's been re-sleeved into Anthony Mackie's body, which is it's a synthetic body, but it's like an upgraded combat model. So it's got like super strength and advanced healing and like all this. I've only watched 2 episodes, so I haven't seen all the parts yet. But Kovacs is on his own quest to find like his old girlfriend or something like that. But it's this really interesting world that they've built around this story. And it's a good show. The first season was really good. It's based on a book, and then now the second season is kind of taking off and pushing the story forward. So I really recommend it. It's really good. But I think you would really like it.
Definitely gonna check it out. Haven't been watching much. I got caught up on this reality show, Love is Blind. And I got this thing for like trash reality shows. These people, you sit in these boxes and you talk to someone, and after like 10 days, you gotta figure out if you want to ask them to marry you. And yes. You live in a house, the guys on one side, girls on the other, and every day you meet in these like pods. You can't see the person until you've asked them to marry them and they've accepted. Then they sent them off to Mexico, and after that they moved in with each other and had 30 days to decide they were going to get married. 2 out of 6 couples got married. It's insane. Completely insane. That's why I stuck with it. I was like, this is insane that these people are going to go through with it. And one of the couples actually, like, they seemed like a good fit. The guy was like, one of the guys, he's like a data scientist. The other girl was like a content creator. There was interracial, and that looked like it was going to be a challenge, but they're perfect for each other. Everybody else is just horrible. And I came away from the show like, almost all these people need therapy, except for the couple that like made it. Like, they just all had these deep rooted issues that needed to be addressed. And then one guy, he thought he met the girl of his dreams, and then she's like, oh, I don't work. I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. And you should have just saw his face drop. And then she's like, I have student loans for a degree I never finished, and all my credit cards are maxed out. And I'm just thinking to myself, run. You need to run. And he actually ended up marrying this woman. And then just, good luck, buddy. Good luck with it. Now it's your debt, not just hers.
Yeah, I just see like some of the drama that like see articles and stuff like that, like on BuzzFeed and things. It's like, yeah, not the same for me.
It's hilarious. Like how some of these people made these decisions. Family and friends looking at them like, you're nuts. And they went through with it. Well, 2 out of 6, but just to even begin that process. And that's what I've been watching.
I've also I've been watching Picard.
And I was gonna ask you, how is that?
I'm torn.
Oh, I was going to say that didn't sound good.
Only because it's like Patrick Stewart, like Jean-Luc Picard has become like a side character in his own TV show almost. And I know the dude's like pushing 90, and I know like what are you gonna really get out of him? But
yeah,
it's like he's very much not the Jean-Luc Picard that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know that they're really hitting it exactly where I want to be. That said, I think the production value is amazing. I think the acting, the performances are fantastic. It's way better than Discovery. And, you know, it definitely hits the nostalgia chain pretty hard. You know, they're pulling back characters from Next Generation and from Voyager, and you know, they're doing stuff like that. But I think it's like missing the mark, but like only by a little bit. It's tough to put my finger on it.
So is it one of those things that feels like it can get on track?
Maybe. You know, the last couple episodes, like the first couple episodes were a little uneven, and then they had 2 episodes that that Jonathan Frakes directed, and he really is a good director. Regardless of his involvement with Star Trek, he's just a good director. And so he kind of pulled it kind of back on course a little bit. I think I'm still trying to figure out the story that they're trying to tell, but like I said, it's just like it's close, but it's not quite there. And I'm just hoping that I think they just hit the halfway point, so just hoping the back half just kind of nudges it back to where it needs to be.
Well, hopefully it gets on track, because I'm going to need to borrow somebody's CBS All Access and check this thing out. I've heard it's weird what you're saying. I've heard from a lot of people on Twitter, so we shall see. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I think we've pretty much covered
all right,
what we need to cover.
We will be back in about 2 weeks. Thank you for checking this out, and we'll be back with some Westworld.
Yeah, Westworld will be on at that point. We'll have seen that episode.
Also, you know what? One thing for you I want to talk about with
maybe like 2 weeks in a day, because 2 weeks, if we drop this on Tuesday, 2 weeks will be St. Patrick's Day, and I might be busy.
Yeah, we'll use the word busy. So maybe that Thursday,
singing the song of my people.
So Game Developers Conference is canceled due to coronavirus fears. PAX East was, not what it usually is. I think Mobile World Congress, Samsung pulled out. How do you think this is going to affect Comic-Con in New York this year? Or Comic-Con San Diego as well?
I think it'll affect San Diego more if they don't get a handle on this. I mean, this is, this thing it's scary. It's not necessarily as scary as they're making it out to be, but it's pretty scary, and it's tough, because it's tough to it's tough to really wrap your head around what the numbers mean, unless you're like kind of an epidemiologist, or you study stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like the death rate is 2%, and that doesn't sound like a lot, unless you realize that like the death rate from like the flu is like 0.01%. So like, this thing is like 20 times more deadly than the flu, than the most virulent strain of the flu. And it's already killed like tons more people than like SARS and MERS and all these other things. So, it's pretty bad. And it's already moving around. It's in China, it's in South Korea, it's in Japan, it's in Italy, it's here. They found cases in California. I think somebody died out in Washington.
Yeah,
they just discovered 2 cases in Rhode Island, I think. There's cases in Massachusetts. So, it's out there. But the good news is that like 80% of the people who contract it have very little in the way of symptoms at all, and they recover from it fully. So the overwhelming odds are that you'll be fine, even if you get it.
And I think the other thing that makes it tricky is we live in this age of news where like we talk about offline off this pod a lot, people don't read articles completely. People post fraudulent stuff all the time.
Oh yeah, we definitely live in a post-fact world.
Yeah, so you don't know what's real and what's not what you're reading. So folks, wash your hands, take care of yourself, stay inside and listen to old episodes of Movie Punditry. Just be safe.
Yeah, there's no risk of infection there.
and watch movies. Hit us up online. You can reach me at Randell Burns. Comments, feedback, constructive criticism, praise. I'll take it all. Mike, where can they find you online?
At MikeyMo1741.
All right, folks. So wash your hands. 20 seconds. Sing Happy Birthday or your favorite song while you do it. Stay safe.
Twice.
You
gotta sing it twice.